Your soulmate's ex is desperately trying to stop you from discovering what happened behind your back. Because the moment you learn the truth, every unexplained silence, every sudden change in your soulmate's behavior, and every painful misunderstanding between you will begin making sense. They are not afraid that this message will hurt you. They are afraid it will expose them. For months, they controlled what your soulmate heard about you, removed important parts from private conversations, and transformed ordinary moments into evidence of betrayal. But one hidden message has now been recovered, and it proves that both you and your soulmate tried to reach each other while someone's one from their past was secretly making sure neither message arrived, as it was originally written. Your soulmate's ex never expected the complete truth to return. They believed the deleted messages were gone, the altered screenshots would never be questioned, and the people who helped spread the false story would remain silent forever. They were confident because the plan had worked for longer than anyone imagined. Your soulmate became distant, you became tired of defending yourself against accusations no one clearly explained, and the connection slowly disappeared beneath confusion. From the outside, it looked as though two people had simply lost interest, but behind that apparent ending was a person who understood your soulmate's fears, and knew exactly how to use those fears to keep both of you separated. At first, the ex did not openly attack you. They were far too careful for that. They presented themselves as mature, protective, and completely uninterested in interfering with your soulmate's future. They said they only wanted your soulmate to be happy. Even if that happiness came from another person, they acted supportive whenever your name was mentioned, and occasionally said something complimentary, so no one would suspect resentment. But beneath that performance, they were studying the connection. They watched how your soulmate's expression softened when speaking about you, how frequently your name entered conversations, and how deeply your presence affected someone who had once seemed emotionally unavailable. The ex realized that you were not another temporary distraction. Your soulmate was beginning to question old patterns because of you. Around you, they felt encouraged to communicate more honestly, examine their fears, and imagine a future that did not include returning to familiar but unhealthy situations. You were not trying to remove anyone from their life. Yet the peace your connection created naturally exposed the chaos they had once accepted as normal. The ex understood that if your soulmate continued growing closer to you, their emotional control would weaken. Your soulmate might finally set boundaries, stop answering every late-night call, and stop allowing guilt from the past to determine present decisions. That was when the first small interference began. The ex started asking harmless-looking questions. They wondered whether your soulmate truly knew you as well as they believed. They asked why someone who cared would sometimes need space, why your life contained details your soulmate had not yet heard, and whether your independence might mean you were keeping other options available. None of these questions sounded like accusations. That was exactly why they were effective. An accusation can be rejected immediately, but a question remains inside the mind. It returns during quiet moments, attaches itself to ordinary behavior, and slowly turns uncertainty into suspicion. Whenever you replied later than usual, the ex suggested that your attention might belong elsewhere. Whenever you established a boundary, they said you were attempting to control the relationship. Whenever you became emotional, they described you as unstable. Whenever you remained calm, they said your calmness was proof that you were hiding something. No response could protect you because the conclusion had already been selected. Your soulmate was not being shown your behavior and allowed to interpret it fairly. They were being given an interpretation first, and then encouraged to search your behavior for evidence. The person from their past knew which fear would work best. Your soulmate had already experienced disappointment, abandonment, or betrayal before meeting you. They had learned to expect that people would eventually leave, change, or reveal an intention different from the one they first presented. You entered their life with genuine care. But genuine care can feel frightening to someone who has survived by remaining suspicious. The ex used this history carefully. They did not create every fear inside your soulmate, but they learned how to activate those fears whenever the connection between you became stronger. The first serious lie appeared shortly after an important moment between you. Perhaps you had finally discussed your feelings, shared something vulnerable, or allowed your soulmate to see a future they had secretly wanted, but had been too afraid to name. Your soulmate left that conversation feeling hopeful. They may have told a trusted person that something meaningful was developing, and that for the first time they were considering taking an emotional risk. Somehow, those words reached the ex. Within days, a disturbing story about you appeared. The story included real names, actual places, and one event that had genuinely happened. That is what made it convincing. The ex did not invent everything. They took true pieces and rearranged them until the meaning became false. A friendship was described as a hidden romance. A conversation about your past was presented as proof that you were still emotionally attached to someone. A photograph taken in a group was cropped until it appeared intimate. Your soulmate was shown enough reality to make the lie difficult to recognize, but not enough context to understand the truth. Your soulmate wanted to ask you directly, yet the ex warned them not to reveal what they knew. They said a dishonest person would simply create another explanation if given advance warning. They advised your soulmate to observe you quietly and wait for you to expose yourself. This changed the way your soulmate behaved around you. Their questions became indirect. Their warmth began appearing and disappearing without explanation. They mentioned certain names casually, and watched your face for reactions. They expected you to answer an accusation you had never been allowed to hear. You sensed the change immediately. You could feel that something had entered the connection, but every time you asked what was wrong, your soulmate said they were tired, confused, or dealing with personal pressure. They denied that anyone had spoken about you. They told you not to overthink the distance, even while their behavior gave you every reason to feel uncertain. You began reviewing your own actions, wondering what you had done, and whether a small mistake had damaged something important. The truth was that you were not being judged for something you had done. You were being judged inside a story constructed in your absence. The ex watched this distance grow and felt relieved. Every misunderstanding created more room for their influence. When your soulmate felt hurt, the ex became the person offering comfort. When your soulmate questioned your intentions, the ex offered another explanation that confirmed the worst possibility. They appeared patient and understanding while quietly making sure the wound never fully closed. The greater the confusion became, the more necessary the ex appeared. But the ex made one major mistake. They assumed you would respond to uncertainty by chasing endlessly. They expected you to send repeated messages, demand explanations, and become emotionally reactive enough to make the accusations against you appear believable. For a while, you did try. You asked for honesty. you attempted to create calm conversations. You explained that the sudden inconsistency was hurting you, and that no connection could survive if concerns remained hidden. But when each attempt produced another vague response, something inside you began changing. You did not stop caring. You stopped abandoning yourself. You realized that you were being asked to prove your innocence without knowing the accusation, repair a connection without being told what had broken, and reassure someone who refused to explain why trust had disappeared. You became quieter, because your heart was exhausted. You stepped back because every attempt to move closer was being treated suspiciously. The ex immediately used your withdrawal as further evidence, telling your soulmate that an innocent person would never walk away so easily. What they did not explain was how long you had tried before becoming silent. They did not mention the nights you waited for honest communication, the careful messages you wrote, or the ways you reduced your own needs to avoid making your soulmate feel pressured. They showed the ending without showing everything that created it. They described your distance as abandonment, because that version protected their plan. If your soulmate understood that you withdrew after repeatedly being denied clarity, they might begin questioning who benefited from that confusion. Your soulmate still missed you despite everything they had been told. This became the ex's greatest problem. Physical distance did not erase your emotional importance. Your soulmate continued, checking your profile, noticing when you appeared happier, and becoming quiet whenever someone suggested you might be moving forward. They compared other people to you, without admitting it. They remembered your voice during difficult moments, and imagined how you would respond to situations happening in their life. The ex had succeeded in stopping communication, but they had not removed the bond. That was when a second and more damaging lie was created. A screenshot appeared showing words supposedly written by you. The message suggested that you had never taken the relationship seriously, that you enjoyed receiving your soulmate's attention, or that you were planning to disappear once they became emotionally attached. The language sounded close enough to yours to feel real. It included a private detail that only a limited number of people knew. Your soulmate felt humiliated. They believed they had defended someone who had secretly laughed at their feelings. The ex advised them not to confront you. They said the strongest response was silence, and that if you truly cared, you would sense something was wrong and fight to repair it. Your soulmate accepted this advice because they were hurt and afraid. They became colder. They ignored a message you sent, and later convinced themselves that your failure to send another one proved the screenshot was authentic. Meanwhile, you interpreted their silence as the final confirmation that they no longer valued the connection. Both of you were waiting for something the other person did not know was required. Your soulmate waited for you to deny a lie you had never seen. You waited for your soulmate to explain a distance they refused to name. The ex stood between those two silences and watched each day strengthen the misunderstanding. They continued telling your soulmate that your lack of action was evidence of guilt, while privately fearing that one direct conversation could destroy everything they had created. The first crack appeared when someone recognized the screenshot. This person noticed a detail that did not match the claimed source. Perhaps the font was slightly different, the timestamp belonged to another time zone, or a section had been copied from a completely unrelated conversation. They did not immediately accuse anyone, but they mentioned that the evidence looked unusual. Your soulmate dismissed the concern at first. Accepting that the screenshot might be false would require them to revisit every decision made because of it. Then another contradiction appeared. One of the people supposedly involved denied hearing the words attributed to them. A photograph used as proof had been taken months earlier than the ex claimed. A person accused of being secretly connected to you was in a public relationship elsewhere and had never interacted with you in the way described. The more your soulmate examined the story, the less stable it became. The ex reacted badly when questioned. Instead of calmly explaining, they accused your soulmate of becoming blinded by feelings for you. They said, your soulmate was searching for excuses, because accepting betrayal was too painful. They reminded them of every previous heartbreak and warned that trusting you again would lead to another humiliation. This emotional pressure temporarily silenced the questions, but it also revealed something important. Someone telling the truth usually welcomes verification. The ex appeared frightened by it. The person who finally exposed the first complete lie had originally helped pass information without understanding how it would be used. They believed they were sharing an ordinary detail, not contributing to the destruction of a connection. When they discovered that their words had been changed, guilt became impossible to ignore. They contacted your soulmate and admitted that the ex had repeatedly asked questions about you, encouraged them to remember events in a specific way, and later exaggerated statements until they carried a completely different meaning. This person also revealed something the ex had hidden. You had never mocked your soulmate. You had never said they were unimportant or disposable. During a conversation when others criticized your soulmate's behavior, you had defended them. You said that fear sometimes causes people to act in ways that do not reflect their deepest feelings. Even while hurt, you refused to let others reduce your soulmate to their worst moments. Your soulmate felt the first wave of shame when they heard this. They had been told you were laughing at them, while you were actually protecting their dignity. They had believed you were sharing private details while you were refusing to expose them. The ex knew this positive information existed and deliberately removed it from the story. Anything that showed your loyalty was hidden. Anything capable of producing suspicion was repeated until it felt undeniable. Your soulmate began examining old messages again. The meaning of your words changed when they were read without the ex's interpretation. A sentence once described as manipulative looked like a request for clarity. A boundary described as punishment looked like an attempt to protect your emotional well-being. Your final silence no longer appeared calculated. It looked like the silence of someone who had run out of ways to explain pain to a person who would not reveal what they believed. Then the most important discovery appeared. There had been a message from your soulmate that you never received. During one of the final periods of distance, your soulmate wrote a long confession. They admitted missing you, regretting the way fear had controlled their behavior, and wanting one honest conversation before the connection disappeared completely. The message was vulnerable and unlike anything they had previously allowed themselves to say. Before sending it, they showed it to someone for advice. The message eventually reached the ex. They told your soulmate that sending it would make them appear weak and give you control. They said you had already moved forward and would probably share the message with others. They offered to help rewrite it into something less emotional. After enough doubt was created, your soulmate deleted the message. They decided that if you truly cared, you would reach out first. What your soulmate did not know was that you had already written a message of your own. You admitted that the distance had hurt you, but you did not want anger to become the final meaning of the connection. You said you were willing to have one direct conversation, if both people could speak honestly, without outside assumptions. You acknowledged that your heart still cared, but you could no longer remain where love required constant uncertainty. That message was intercepted, shortened, or described dishonestly. Your soulmate saw only the part where you said you could not continue in the same pattern. The lines offering a conversation were removed. The sentence, admitting that part of you still hoped for understanding, disappeared. The ex presented the remaining words as a final rejection, and told your soulmate that contacting you would only cause further humiliation. Your soulmate believed you had closed the door. You believed they had chosen silence. In reality, both of you had reached for the same conversation, and someone from the past had ensured that neither attempt arrived completely. This is the truth the ex is now begging to keep hidden. They are not only afraid you will learn they disliked you, they are afraid you will learn that the separation they described as natural was deliberately strengthened by deleted words and altered messages. The evidence surfaced because the ex had not deleted every copy. A device backup, shared account, saved screenshot, or forgotten conversation preserved parts of what happened. Someone found the original version of your message and compared it with the version your soulmate had been shown. The missing sentences were impossible to deny. Your soulmate stared at the words for a long time, reading them repeatedly as though their meaning might change. They saw that you had not rejected them. You had asked for honesty. You had not said your feelings were gone. You had said feelings alone were no longer enough to sustain a connection without trust. You had not disappeared without explanation. You had offered a door that someone else quietly closed before your soulmate could see it. When confronted with this evidence, the ex began begging. They said nothing good would come from telling you. They argued that too much time had passed and that reopening the truth would only create pain. They warned your soulmate that you would use the information to take revenge, destroy reputations, or manipulate your way back into their life. But their desperation exposed them. If they truly believed their actions were harmless, they would not have been terrified of you seeing the original messages. Your soulmate asked why the messages had been changed. The ex first denied everything, then admitted removing only a few lines. They claimed the deleted parts would have confused your soulmate and said they were trying to protect them from false hope. When that explanation failed, they blamed jealousy, loneliness, and fear of losing their importance. They said they never intended for the situation to become so serious. But manipulation often begins with one small attempt to control an outcome and grows every time the first interference succeeds. The ex confessed that your presence made them feel replaceable. Even after their relationship with your soulmate had ended, they remained accustomed to being the person whose opinion mattered most. They were called during difficult moments, consulted before major decisions, and allowed emotional access without offering the commitment that such access normally requires. You threatened this arrangement without deliberately doing anything against them. Your connection encouraged your soulmate to become more independent, which meant the ex's influence was naturally becoming smaller. The ex did not necessarily want to rebuild the old relationship in a healthy way. They wanted to remain unforgettable. They wanted reassurance that no new person could become more important. When your soulmate began speaking about you with genuine hope, the ex experienced that hope as a loss of power. They convinced themselves that interfering was justified, because they understood your soulmate better than you did. In reality, they were protecting their position, not your soulmate's heart. Your soulmate began remembering every moment when the ex appeared immediately after conflict between you. They noticed how quickly comfort was offered after doubt had been created. They remembered the ex encouraging them to withdraw from you, and then becoming unusually available during the resulting loneliness. What once looked like support now appeared carefully timed. The same person who helped create the wound repeatedly presented themselves as the only one capable of understanding it. The realization became emotionally overwhelming, because your soulmate had to face more than the ex's dishonesty. They had to face their own choices. The ex planted suspicion, but your soulmate allowed that suspicion to become stronger than direct communication. They chose not to ask you clearly. They accepted hidden evidence because, part of them, was already afraid that something beautiful would eventually disappear. Believing the lie allowed them to retreat before vulnerability became complete. If you were dishonest, then their emotional distance appeared wise. If another person existed, then their inconsistency had not caused the separation. If you never cared, then they did not have to admit that they mishandled someone who did. The ex's story became powerful because it protected your soulmate from confronting their own fear. The truth removes that protection. Your soulmate is now remembering the final time you asked what had changed. They remember your expression, the tiredness behind your voice, and the way you waited for one honest answer. They knew something had been said about you, but they refused to explain because the ex had warned that confrontation would allow you to manipulate them. They told you nothing was wrong while behaving as though everything was wrong. You looked at them as if giving one final opportunity to choose direct truth. When they remained silent, something in you became still. You stopped arguing. You stopped trying to prove that your care was real. Your soulmate mistook that stillness for indifference. Now they understand. It was the moment your heart realized you could not fight a hidden accusation forever. The recovered messages have changed the way they remember that moment. Your silence no longer appears cruel. It appears exhausted. Your distance no longer looks like evidence that you had someone else. It looks like the decision of a person who refused to remain on trial, inside a relationship that would not name the charges. The ex is terrified because your soulmate has begun speaking about contacting you. They have written several possible messages. One begins with an apology and admits that outside influence damaged their trust. Another explains that important information was hidden, and asks whether you would be willing to see the evidence. A third says only that they recently discovered something that changed their understanding of the past. None of these messages feels sufficient. Your soulmate understands that the truth may explain their behavior, but it does not erase the effect of that behavior. You were still doubted. You still spent nights questioning your worth. You still experienced warmth, turning into silence without knowing why. You still had to rebuild yourself after being blamed inside a story you were never allowed to read. The ex has begged your soulmate not to contact you. They have cried, apologized, and reminded them of years of shared history. They have said that telling you would destroy everyone involved. But your soulmate has started realizing that hiding the truth would continue the same manipulation. The ex is asking them to protect the person who altered the messages by sacrificing the person harmed by those alterations. Someone close to your soulmate has advised them to tell you everything, but not to approach with expectations. They have been told that you deserve the truth, whether or not you choose reconciliation. This is important. An apology should not become another strategy for gaining access to your heart. Your soulmate must reveal what happened because honesty is owed to you, not because the truth guarantees another chance. If they contact you, their message may arrive unexpectedly. It may be longer than anything they have sent before. They may begin by saying that you were right to sense someone else's influence, and that they are ashamed. They did not trust your character enough to ask you directly. They may show you both versions of the messages. They may explain how the screenshot was created, and who admitted changing the story. They may ask you to listen, without promising forgiveness. Before answering, remember that you do not need to make an immediate decision. Learning the truth may create relief, anger, sadness, and hope at the same time. You may feel validated because the confusion finally has an explanation. You may also feel hurt knowing how close both of you were to a real conversation. These emotions can exist together. You are allowed to take time. The ex's interference explains part of what happened, but it does not remove your soulmate's responsibility. They must not appear before you saying that everything was another person's fault. They chose secrecy over communication. They allowed fear to define your intentions. They tested you instead of trusting you enough to ask a direct question. A sincere apology will acknowledge these choices, without hiding behind manipulation. Pay attention to whether your soulmate is prepared to hear your experience. Do they ask what the silence did to you? Or do they focus only on their guilt? Do they respect your boundaries? Or do they expect immediate access because the truth has been revealed? Do they show consistent honesty after the emotional discovery? Or do they return to old habits once their fear of losing you becomes less intense? Their response to your boundaries will reveal whether they have genuinely changed. The ex may attempt to contact you directly. They might ask you not to expose the messages, claim they acted from love, or accuse you of destroying old relationships by revealing what happened. You do not owe participation in another secret. You also do not need revenge. Preserve anything important, protect your peace, and allow the truth to remain complete. The facts are already powerful without exaggeration. Their greatest fear is not simply that you and your soulmate might reconnect. Their greatest fear is losing control over the story. For a long time, they decided what your soulmate knew, what your silence meant, and which version of your intentions appeared believable. Once you and your soulmate speak directly, that control ends. Even if both of you decide to remain apart, the decision will finally belong to the two people whose hearts were involved. Your soulmate is beginning to see that the person described as dangerous was often the only person refusing to play emotional games. You did not manipulate mutual friends, manufacture screenshots, or use private information for influence. When the connection became unhealthy, you stepped away. You carried pain, without turning that pain into a campaign against anyone. The ex interpreted your restraint as weakness, because they believed whoever controlled the information controlled the outcome. But restraint protected your character. You did not need to destroy another person to prove that you were genuine. You did not need to force your soulmate to choose you. You wanted to be chosen through clarity, not pressure. This is why the ex would beg you not to continue watching. Every revelation removes another lie they depended upon. The delayed reply was not proof of another relationship. The photograph was not romantic. Reshot was changed. Your message was incomplete when shown. Your soulmate's message was deleted before it reached you. The silence between you was not empty. It was filled with words someone else refused to allow through. Yet the deepest revelation is not about the ex. It is about what you deserve moving forward. You deserve a connection where concerns are brought directly to you. You deserve someone who does not allow outside opinions to become stronger than your demonstrated character. You deserve communication that does not require secret messengers, emotional tests, or hidden investigations. Perhaps your soulmate will ask for another chance. They may say that knowing the truth has awakened feelings they had tried to bury. They may admit that they never stopped thinking about you, and that every attempt to move forward felt incomplete. These feelings may be real, but feelings alone did not protect the connection before. Any new chapter must be built through behavior. They will need to demonstrate that they can communicate when fear appears. They will need to create healthy boundaries with the person who interfered. They will need to stop using mutual friends as interpreters of private emotions. They will need to understand that trust is not created by demanding that you prove yourself repeatedly. Trust is created when both people are willing to ask difficult questions, without turning those questions into secret verdicts. You may decide to listen. You may decide that too much damage occurred. You may remain uncertain for a while. Every one of these responses is valid. The hidden truth does not place an obligation on you. It returns information that should have belonged to you from the beginning. Do not rush back into the old version of the relationship, merely because the explanation feels dramatic. Sometimes people become intensely emotional after discovering they were wrong. But emotional shock is not permanent transformation. Let time reveal whether your soulmate's accountability remains after the immediate guilt settles. The version of you who once chased clarity may feel tempted to accept the first apology as the answer to every unanswered question. The version of you that exists now understands that an apology can begin a conversation without determining the ending. You can remain compassionate without becoming unprotected. Your soulmate must also accept that forgiveness and reconciliation are different. You may release anger for your own peace, while still deciding that trust cannot safely return. Genuine remorse will respect this possibility. Someone who has changed will not punish you for needing time after being denied truth for so long. The ex may continue telling others that you manipulated your soulmate into turning against them. This is another attempt to control the narrative. But your soulmate now has the original messages, the conflicting timelines, and the confession of the person whose words were changed. The truth no longer depends on one person's interpretation. Your soulmate is likely experiencing grief for the relationship they thought they had with their ex. Even after romance ends, trust can remain, and discovering that this trust was used against them creates a painful kind of loss. They may feel anger one day and doubt the next. They may question whether confronting the ex makes them disloyal. This process belongs to them. You do not need to become their therapist, or guide them through every consequence of the discovery. Your responsibility is to remain honest about what you need. Perhaps you need a complete explanation. Perhaps you need space before any conversation. Perhaps you need evidence that the interference has genuinely ended. Perhaps you no longer want to reopen a chapter that cost too much peace. Your truth matters as much as theirs. The ex wanted your soulmate to believe that you were difficult to understand. In reality, your requests were simple. You wanted direct communication, emotional consistency, and the freedom to respond to actual concerns, rather than invisible accusations. These needs became complicated only because honesty threatened the person benefiting from confusion. The hidden messages prove that you were not refusing love. You were refusing a pattern where you were expected to carry uncertainty without explanation. You did not close your heart without reason. You protected it after every attempt at openness was interpreted through someone else's fear. Your soulmate is now reading your full message and noticing the tenderness that had been removed. They see the line where you admitted still caring. They see the invitation to speak honestly. They see that even while setting a boundary, you left room for truth. The ex preserved the boundary and removed the love, creating an image of you that never existed. Your soulmate may cry when they realize this. They may remember all the times they called you cold, prideful, or uninterested. They may understand that you were protecting yourself, while secretly hoping they would choose direct conversation. Regret may become overwhelming, but regret must eventually become responsibility. If a new conversation happens, let it begin with facts. Ask what was changed, when it happened, and who had access. Allow your soulmate to explain, but do not let the drama of the ex's behavior erase the impact of their choices. Both truths can exist together. They were manipulated, and they still failed to communicate with you. A healthy future can only be built when no one is required to deny difficult truths in order to preserve hope. Your soulmate should not need to pretend they were completely powerless. You should not need to pretend their actions caused no damage. Honesty must include the entire story. The ex may have believed that keeping you apart would eventually make your soulmate return to what was familiar. Instead, the interference has forced your soulmate to see the difference between familiarity and genuine safety. Familiarity can exist alongside control. Safety allows freedom, truth, and the ability to choose without hidden pressure. Your connection challenged the old pattern because it asked your soulmate to become emotionally responsible. The ex offered comfort without requiring growth. For someone afraid of change, that comfort was tempting. But comfort that depends on remaining confused eventually becomes another form of captivity. Now your soulmate has a choice. They can confront their patterns, accept responsibility, and learn how to build trust differently. Or they can remain focused only on blaming the ex, and eventually repeat the same dynamic with another person. Their next actions will show which path they choose. You also have a choice. You can allow the truth to free you from self-blame, without allowing it to pull you back into waiting. You can recognize that the distance was not proof of your unworthiness. You can understand why the behavior changed, without using understanding as an excuse to accept the same behavior again. The biggest message inside this revelation is that your instincts were not wrong. You sensed that another influence had entered the connection. You felt that important information was missing. You recognized that the explanations you received did not match the intensity of the distance. You were not imagining the contradiction. But even correct intuition must be paired with self-respect. You cannot build a healthy relationship by constantly proving that hidden threats exist. The person beside you must be willing to protect direct communication. Without that willingness, every outside voice can become another wall. The ex's control is weakening because your soulmate has finally seen the original messages. Words cannot be unseen once they are read in complete form. The deleted tenderness has returned. The hidden invitation has become visible. The story that supported the separation is collapsing. What happens next is not guaranteed, and that uncertainty should not frighten you. For the first time, uncertainty may exist without manipulation. You and your soulmate can make decisions using complete information. You may reconnect. You may speak once and release the past. You may discover that love remains, but trust requires more time than either of you expected. Whatever the outcome, the ex no longer controls the meaning of your silence. They cannot continue describing your boundary as cruelty. When the complete message proves your intention, they cannot claim your soulmate never tried to reach you when the deleted confession exists. Their greatest weapon was missing information, and that weapon is losing its power. Continue protecting the life you built while answers were unavailable. Do not return to checking constantly for a message. Let your soulmate approach with clarity, if they are ready. Let their actions carry the truth toward you. You have already spent enough time chasing explanations. When the message arrives, you may recognize the fear behind every sentence. Your soulmate may not know how to ask forgiveness without sounding as though they expect a reunion. They may say that they understand if you never respond. They may simply want you to know that your instincts were correct, and that your message was never received as written. You can choose to acknowledge the truth, without deciding anything more. A single response does not reopen the entire relationship. A conversation does not become a promise. Hearing an apology does not require you to remove every boundary. The person from your soulmate's past begged that you remain unaware, because awareness returns your power. You now understand that another person's manipulation was never a verdict on your worth. You now understand that your soulmate's silence contained fear, misinformation, and an unsent confession. Most importantly, you understand that you were always worthy of being asked directly. The ex may have controlled the messages for a season, but they could not permanently control the truth. The original words survived. The witnesses began speaking. The contradictions became too obvious to ignore. What was hidden is now being examined under a light strong enough to reveal every missing piece. Comment: the complete truth will reach me if you are no longer accepting partial stories as explanations for your worth. Like this video if you believe genuine love must be protected through direct communication, and subscribe for more messages that remind you that silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes silence is what remains after someone else secretly removes the words both hearts were trying to send. Your soulmate's ex begged you not to watch because they knew the truth would change everything. But the deepest change is not simply that your soulmate may return. The deepest change is that you can finally stop blaming yourself for a distance created by information you were never given. The hidden messages have returned. The false story is collapsing, and whatever happens next must finally be decided through honesty rather than fear.